In this video, I'm going to talk about Prop 30, what it is, the arguments on both sides, and then lastly, my own personal opinion. First off, what is Prop 30? I'm on calmatters.org right now, giving you the objective overview. Prop 30 would impose a 1.75% personal income tax increase for people making $2 million a year or more. From this income tax, they would make anywhere between $3.5 billion and $5 billion annually. And this new revenue stream would subsidize zero-emission vehicles and fund wildfire response and prevention. There are a couple more things though. Most of the money, about 80%, would go towards rebates for people buying zero-emission cars and to build more charging stations. Half of that funding will go to low and middle income residents who are disproportionately affected by low air quality and heavy pollution. And then lastly, a quarter of the tax money would provide funding to hire and train firefighters who are battling increasingly worse wildfires. Now talking about the arguments on both sides. Remember, if you vote yes for this, you're for this new income tax. If you vote no, you vote against it. Now, people who are for it say that the funding addresses the state's two leading causes of air pollution: gas-powered vehicles and wildfires. They say the money would help accelerate the transition to electric vehicles, beef up the state's charging infrastructure, and provide more resources to firefighters who must now work year-round to fight and prevent deadly wildfires. Overall, they argue that these investments will better put the state on track to meet its ambitious climate goals. Now talking about the arguments against it, people say that it's an unnecessary tax hike and that we don't need another one because we're already feeling the effects of high inflation, surging gas prices, and the rising cost of living, as we all know. They say Californians already pay the nation's highest personal income tax rates, and that this new income tax would drive many residents out of the state to benefit a special interest, ride-sharing companies. The current governor, Gavin Newsom, called the measure a cyclical seam by Lyft, the largest donor to the measure, to have taxpayers help it comply with the state's electric car mandate for rideshare companies. In addition, many opponents say Newsom's recent $10 billion climate investment and a $97.5 billion surplus in this year's budget, along with the recent federal funds for electric car incentives, make the state well equipped to pay for the transition to electric vehicles and additional wildfire prevention efforts. Now talking about my own personal perspective on this, I am 100% voting yes. I have three main reasons why. One is when it comes to climate change and global warming and protecting the environment, that right now should be our number one priority. I believe in science, I believe in math and statistics, and all the studies, analytics, scientists, people who dedicate their life to this have said that our planet's warming at a super rapid rate, and if we don't stop that, the planet could become uninhabitable. And it gets to the point where even if you're against global warming or you don't believe in it, you might not even be around to have an opinion at all. And while yes, we already do have a lot of money going to these type of programs, I think having extra income is never a bad idea. The second point is the actual mathematics. Now, like I said earlier, this only affects people making $2 million a year or more. If let's say this affected everybody, if let's say this affected people making over 100K a year or whatever, I'd be a little bit more hesitant about voting yes. Now for me personally, I'd be okay with this even if it did affect me. Now I will say I don't make over $2 million a year, maybe someday, but right now I don't, and even still, I'd be okay with a 1.75% tax increase. If you think about it, 1.75% of your total income is such a small amount, and while yes, on the argumentative side, they did say, look, there's already high inflation here in California, people making $2 million a year or more can easily cover their living expenses, making this a lot easier on them than someone else who just can't afford food or gas at all. And point number three, which to me is the biggest one, is when you look at emissions versus wealth. This is a snippet from an article on Bloomberg.com. I'll post both these sites in the description below. And as you can see at the bottom of the paragraph, the trend is clear. Emissions generally rise with wealth, which means that the people who are being affected by Prop 30, the people making $2 million a year or more, are actually the people also causing the most emissions. If you look at a normal person who, let's say, just drives to work, doesn't really have that many emissions, well, why charge them an extra tax increase when they're barely causing a sliver of the emissions compared to someone who is a lot more wealthy who, based off the statistics, is going to be making more emissions? So just from the pure statistics, the people making $2 million a year or more, the people in that category are causing the biggest emissions. So it would make sense to say, hey, you're causing the most emissions, so we're going to put on an extra 1.75% tax increase just to go to electric vehicles, wildfires, people in low-income housing who get affected by emissions, and more.